Hello, I'm Lindsay Konzak, editor of Modern Distribution Management at MDM.com. Welcome to this month's Executive Briefing. Today I'm talking with Tom Gale, who is publisher of MDM and president of MDM's sister company, Industrial Market Information. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
This month's topic is the value of analytics for distributors. And Tom, for those who are not that familiar with Industrial Market Information, could you give us a quick overview?
Sure. Industrial Market Information is a market analytics firm that has been around since 1987. I've been involved with it since 1992. We help our customers and its manufacturers, distributors, and even financial investors into industrial and construction companies with really sizing, segmenting, and profiling industrial markets. So we help a lot of our customers identify what the market potential is, what the wallet share is of their customers, and also what the market share is as well. Additionally, we are able to identify high potential customers and prospects by attending what an estimated demand is at actual account locations.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So earlier this year, we published MDM's survey on the state of analytics and distribution, and you really drove that survey. So what for you were some of the key takeaways from that?
Well, one of the things we heard is that there's still a lot of growth for analytics adoption. People are really having a difficult time in three primary areas. One of them is actually capturing data. They don't have a good means of extracting out the data and really being able to take a look at what their ERP systems are and what's going on and being able to understand that data. There's also one of the top answers was that the skill sets internally aren't there yet, and we're seeing a real shift in terms of where a competitive gap's starting to form in terms of skill sets that companies are taking on in terms of being able to drive analytic projects internally.
So you've talked about the differences in previous presentations between a reactive approach and a proactive approach to analytics. Can you talk a little bit about those differences and how those might be contributing to a widening competitive gap?
Sure. There is a gap that's been taking place over the last several years with companies that have really started to adopt analytics. And if you think about how it's worked in wholesale distribution over the last couple of decades, in the 1990s, companies really focused on operational analytics, inventory management. I mean, back in the early 90s, even ISO 9000 certification and process improvement. What you have seen in the last 10 years really develop is more predictive analytics starting to come into companies in the areas of pricing and also in terms of profitability in particular. The final frontier of that is really in market analytics, which is our sweet spot, obviously. But what you're seeing is more companies are now starting to adopt a more holistic approach to analytics and predictive analytics and really just getting more sophisticated. So there's the industry maturing, you're seeing more people adopting, but there's still a gap between those companies that aren't and those companies that are really being proactive about adopting that as part of their strategy going forward.
Let's go a little bit deeper now. Could you define what market analytics means?
You know, one way to look at it is, if you're familiar with the movie Moneyball in the book, where the Oakland A's baseball team, the manager there, Billy Beane, he started using analytics to really identify players with the best potential rather than rely on the scouts and their knowledge in that. They really started to use system and analytics to identify specific player skills that translated into wins. The net result of that was it really made for them to be able to acquire those players at a very low cost and field winning teams versus teams that were paying high amounts of money but not necessarily getting payoffs off the big payrolls. Translate what's happening there over into wholesale distribution, and what you find is you're able to extract out of your transaction data and customer data some insights and build some predictive models about what might happen with other customer segments and in other areas. You can do the same thing by bringing in benchmarking data from an outside source and taking a look at what a market size is and where the segments and where the demand is. There's lots of different sources. That IMI that's our core function, is to provide those types of what we call top-down market estimates for what's happening in markets. but there's many other sources that are available that distributors can tap into.
What's the payback distributors can, I guess, yield from market analytics?
There's a number of different things. One is you're able to gain a much more complete picture of who your best customers are, and then you're able to model those and then apply that to the rest of the market out there. That's one of the best ways to really identify the highest potential prospects out there, and we do that a lot with our customers. It's a very successful modeling. You can identify your sweet spots, and from there take that out and go after the same types of customers elsewhere. Additionally, you can really map out what your current market share is and take a look at what the opportunity is out there and where to focus your growth. Really focus on the highest potential customers and prospects, those who are going to have the highest wallet, low share of wallet, and high net profit ultimately. You really want to be able to target as much as possible your most profitable customers out there and prospects. Finally, it's really a Salesforce management tool. Once you have the data and the information about what your markets look like and what the opportunity is there, you're able to allocate resources using data, and you can rank the prospect list by potential. You can track metrics such as share of wallet attained and net profit before compensation. More and more companies are really getting much more refined about how they target and who they go after and where they point their resources. You don't want your salespeople to be going after accounts where you have 95% of the spend to get that extra 5%. But if you're into a large account where you currently have 5 or 10% and there's a great opportunity there in terms of a dollar size, that's really where you want to be exploring. So you can really pattern based on your best customers and their behaviors and purchasing patterns, and then use that both to really examine how much wallet and you can expand out of that and what the potential is there. And then additionally, you can go out and take a look at prospects and do the same thing as well.
So Tom, what's the best approach to understanding market opportunity to get the most out of it?
Well, what we find is it's really a combination of a wallet share analysis. And typically we'll take 3 years of customer data and analyze that. And from there, we're able to really get a good picture of the purchasing behaviors and patterns there. What's really interesting is that particularly as markets have shifted over the last 5 years or so, what you used to think were the patterns that really drove success and the growth in your company, a lot of those have shifted in the last 5 years because customers' purchasing behaviors have shifted pretty dramatically in many, many industries. Instead of what you think you know about specific markets and specific behaviors among your customer segments, this really gives you the data, the historical data, to make some decisions about where to allocate your resources, where the best targets are out there to go after. Similarly, if you are able to bring in some benchmarking data, and let's just use an example. So if you're able to size what the coated abrasives market is in a specific metro area where you operate, you're able to take that and then start to make some market share estimations. You're able to identify specific customer segments within that market area and what are going to be the best targets. Once you combine with the success areas for you and your business with what that total market view is, you're able to get a total view of the market that really makes for the best ROI out of any of these analytics.
So Tom, what are some of the action steps that distributors can take to better understand their position in a market or at a customer?
Well, some of this really came out of the analytics survey that we did, and it's before you can fly, you need to walk. And the main thing is, there's only so many projects that you can manage and move forward at one time. It's really important to have a baseline segmentation and understanding of what your customer segments are and what the current picture looks like. From there, that's the real foundation to start prioritizing and building out what your process improvement is going to be with your data management practices, cleaning your data, starting to build in feedback loops out to your sales force in terms of what they know is happening at the customer accounts, and then starting to improve a database that you have about your customers, about the market opportunities out there. And that's a lot of what we do with our customers, is we really help them put some of the dashboards, some of the tools in place to to create some of the visibility to the data throughout the company. And that's where the real win is. If you can set the data free, is a term that you hear quite often, but the more visibility there is across the organization to what's happening on the front lines and really back and forth, the much more adaptable, the much more quickly you can really go after the best opportunities in the market.
So what are the questions distributors should ask themselves to, I guess, drive their analytics initiatives forward?
Well, there really needs to be somebody who's passionate about it, who really understands the value of it and can really move it forward. There's always some pushback if you go to a sales team and say, you know what, we think there's this much opportunity in a client. There's a lot of time there's going to be pushback that, gosh, we've got 90% of the business in there. That's where data can be really helpful, is to start to have a constructive, more objective conversation about what opportunities and some of the questions that can be asked at the account to identify if there's something that hasn't been uncovered there. So that's really the key thing, is it's as much a cultural process to really start to, in a non-threatening way, start to bring data into the conversation, start to have these ongoing conversations, and then just move it forward really step by step. It's easy to choke on trying to bite off too much. It's really good to move things forward kind of slowly. So the key thing is this really changes the conversation to having salespeople really start to look differently at their markets and about what they're doing day to day. Instead of from a purely geographic standpoint or a territory standpoint, they really start to look a little bit deeper into the types of customers, the size of customers, the different behaviors of customers. It really starts getting them asking some different questions. And what we found is once they get on board, and typically, your A players will recognize that this is a way for them to make more money faster. It gets them to the sale a lot quicker to the accounts that are going to really be the best producers for them. And so what we find is that they're the ones that drive this in an organization once they start to get this data in their hands. That's really the big payoff on this. So as distributors ask themselves the questions about, well, what, do we really want to get into an analytics project or really try to understand our markets better? It's really about, in a time now when markets continue to be somewhat unstable, but we're in for a really good growth period overall. This is the opportunity to go and take some market share, and this better understanding of markets is really what the companies who have already brought this in are really getting some significant market share gain from.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tom.
Thanks. It was a pleasure to be here.
And if you want to learn more about industrial market information, just visit imidata.com.